Friends, Shabbat Shalom. Thank you for the opportunity to be able to share some words of Torah with you this evening. You know, we are all sitting Shiva tonight. This past week, one of the greatest Jewish sages of our time and one of the most influential religious leaders in the world, Rabbi Lord Jonathan Sacks, died at the age of 72. In 2016, he was awarded the Templeton Prize in recognition of his exceptional contributions to affirming life's spiritual dimension. Rabbi Lord Sacks was the chief rabbi of the United Kingdom for 22 years between 1991 and 2013 and was the author of over 30 books. Rabbi Sacks was knighted in 2005 and made a life peer in 2009. And Prince Charles shared these words upon hearing his death, and let me quote them. It was with a most profound personal sorrow that I heard of the death of Rabbi Lord Sacks. With his passing, the Jewish community, our nation, and the entire world have lost a leader whose wisdom, scholarship, and humanity were without equal. His immense learning spanned the sacred and the secular, and his prophetic voice spoke to our greatest challenges with unfailing insight and boundless compassion. His wise counsel was sought and appreciated by those of all faiths and none, and he will be missed more than words can say. Although Rabbi Lord Sacks' death is a cause of the greatest possible sadness, we give thanks for the immeasurable contribution which, in the tradition of the most revered teachers of the Jewish people, he made to all our lives. I send my deepest condolences to his family. HRH, the Prince of Wales. Prime Minister Boris Johnson said in Parliament this week that he was deeply saddened by the passing of Rabbi Lord Jonathan Sacks. His leadership had a profound impact on our whole country and across the world. My sincerest condolences to his family, friends, and the Jewish community. May his memory be a blessing. Justin Welby, the Archbishop of Canterbury, said, when you met him, you couldn't help but be swept up in his delight of living, his sense of humor, his kindness, and his desire to know, understand, and value others. It was that rare combination, profound depth, and equally profound commitment to relating with others that made the leadership he offered possible. Cardinal Vincent Nichols, England and Wales' most senior Catholic, expressed sorrow at the loss of this great figure. Chief Rabbi Sacks was a most eloquent proponent of some of the greatest truths of humanity, so often forgotten. I have lost a friend, the Jewish community great leader, humanity an eloquent spokesman. What was so remarkable about Rabbi Sacks was that he bridged worlds. He did not grow up in a religious home. He received a PhD in philosophy from Cambridge, and he taught there, and yet embraced an Orthodox tradition and became an extraordinary scholar of traditional Judaism. He was a once-in-a-lifetime mind and leader of the Jewish people. When Rabbi Sacks got up to teach, he would say, "Friends, let me share with you a little bit of Torah. Let me, this evening, do so in his honor, because this is just a small taste of his brilliance." In my own rabbinate, one painful part of my work is witnessing rifts within families. Over my many decades of rabbinic work, I have witnessed families that get to a point where one part of the family literally does not speak to another. It even gets so bad that siblings will not speak to each other at a funeral of a parent, or a divorced couple cannot be civil to each other at weddings or b'nai mitzvah. I know people know of that, and God forbid even have it in your own families. This is not some 21st century problem. It can be literally traced to the first family of the Jewish people, of Abraham and Sarah. The Torah is quite transparent. There are major rifts within this first family. As we know, Abraham and Sarah have difficulty conceiving, and Sarah comes to a point where she invites Abraham to father a child with her handmaiden Hagar, an Egyptian woman. And Hagar gives birth to Ishmael. Things begin to unravel. The birth of this child embitters Sarah, and she forces Abraham to expel Hagar and Ishmael. There is then a moment of reconciliation. She's allowed to return. But when Sarah conceives and gives birth to Isaac, Sarah cannot tolerate the presence of Hagar and Ishmael in the family. And therefore, Abraham is forced to expel Hagar and Ishmael. And he's tormented by this. But God assures him that this is what is needed, and God will ensure the survival of Hagar and Ishmael, and that Ishmael will be a father of a great nation. As we know, Ishmael is the founder, according to legend, of Islam. Hagar and Ishmael disappear from the narrative. And then after Sarah dies, we learn two additional facts. Abraham, most people don't know this, remarries a woman named Keturah, and they have children. But then something else is revealed. When Abraham dies, both Isaac and Ishmael are there together, these brothers of different mothers, and there's a lot of tension and stress in their lives between them. But somehow they come together, and the Torah is very explicit. It says it very simply that Isaac and Ishmael were there together to bury their father. How does that happen? What led to these reconciliations within the family? What are we to learn from this? Here is how Rabbi Sacks understood this. When Isaac is about to marry Rebekah, a relationship that was facilitated by Abraham's efforts, rabbinic legend teaches the following. Isaac went in search of Hagar. When Isaac heard that his father was seeking a wife for him, he said, "Shall I be married while my father lives alone? I will go and return Hagar to him." Rabbi Sacks asked, who then was Keturah? And he quotes the Midrash, rabbinic legend. She was none other than Hagar herself. It's not unusual for people in the Torah to have more than one name. Jethro, Moses' father-in-law, had 7. And therefore, Rabbi Sacks points out in a very poignant and sensitive way that Hagar did not end her days as an outcast. She returned at Isaac's prompting to become the wife of her former master, Abraham. Rabbi Sacks points out that tradition finds healing of the family. Abraham and Hagar build a second chapter in both of their lives. The rift has been healed. And then Rabbi Sacks continues his provocative interpretation, and he writes, this also changes the painful story of the banishment of Ishmael. We know that Abraham didn't want to send him away, but Sarah demanded of it. It demanded it of him. Nonetheless, God told Abraham to listen to his wife. And Rabbi Sacks goes on to say that there is this very insightful rabbinic tradition which tells of how Abraham twice visited his son Ishmael. And on the first occasion, Ishmael was not at home. His wife, not knowing Abraham's identity, refused the stranger bread and water. Ishmael divorced her and married a woman named Fatima. And this time, when Abraham visited again, not disclosing his identity, the woman gave him food and drink, and rabbinic legend then says, Abraham stood and prayed before the Holy One, blessed be he, and Ishmael's house became filled with all good things. And when Ishmael returned, his wife told him about it, and Ishmael knew that his father still loved him. Father and son were reconciled. Rabbi Sacks' Torah gets even better. It always pays to be a rabbinic genius. That's never been my problem, but I wish it was the case. So Rabbi Sacks' Torah gets better. The name of Ishmael's second wife is Fatima, which is highly significant. In the Quran, Fatima is the daughter of Muhammad. According to Rabbi Sacks, these 8th century rabbis who wrote these rabbinic legends are explicit and positive in reference to Islam. And this is what Rabbi Sacks teaches. And I'm going to quote him. This hidden story has immense consequence for our time. Jews and Muslims both trace their descent from Abraham. Jews through Isaac and Muslims through Ishmael. The fact that both sons stood together at their father's funeral tells us that they too were reunited. Beneath the surface of the story, the sages read the clues and piece together a moving story of reconciliation between Abraham and Hagar on the one hand, and Isaac and Ishmael on the other. Yes, there was conflict and separation, but that was the beginning, not the end. Between Judaism and Islam, there can be friendship and mutual respect. Between Judaism and Islam, there can be friendship. Abraham loved his sons and was laid to rest by both. There is hope for the future in the story of the past. If you want a brilliant explanation of Rabbi Sacks's philosophy of reconciliation and the meaning of how different religions can come together in reconciliation, buy a copy of The Dignity of Difference that got all kinds of awards about its poignant message to the world that is divided. We have just experienced the brilliance of Rabbi Sacks' teaching. This beautiful piece of Torah is so relevant. It has global significance because he was a global thinker. We know how on so many levels we are fractured. Religions, they just sometimes don't fit together. They're just at each other. But Rabbi Sacks is saying to us, look, Muslims and Jews, you're bound together. Any rift is unnatural. We share a common origin, a common story, a common family. The roots of reconciliation are already there. Just open your eyes and see them. Go look into the sources and you will find that reconciliation is already there if you just open your eyes and see what is there. Rabbi Sacks sees dignity in the diversity of the human race. The world has lost a profound religious voice, really a prophetic voice. So this evening, representing our congregation, I'm sure other rabbis and other communities are sharing tributes to Rabbi Sacks as well. May Rabbi Sacks' teachings, his words of wisdom and Torah, his persona, his compassion, his love, his leadership, his vision, let all of that be a source of inspiration for Jews and non-Jews for years to come. May he rest in peace, and let us all say Amen.